This is Sean with Voices of Racing. I'm speaking with Robert Torres, and you're in Melbourne, Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
All right. So you've got a little bit of memorabilia around you, but what we got on screen is when you started in 2010 in karting, and you worked your way all the way up to the Formula Series. So why don't you give us just a little bit of background about what motivated you originally to get into racing in the first place?
Yeah, so my dad, works with the aerospace industry and has always had a passion for racing. So grew up watching it on TV. And then as a kid, I was in Cub Scouts. And one of the things you do in Cub Scouts is you build Pinewood Derby cars and race them. So they're like small scale cars, but at the same time, that's when I also started racing go-karts. And there was a point where my dad was like, all right, do you want to, keep building the cars or do you want to go racing? And my heart was telling me I want to go racing. So that's what we did.
That's great. All right. So you've had a 13-year career so far. You're 24 years old. Let's go into, the styles of cars that you've driven. If you can just kind of give us an overview of how you started in karting and what levels and classes you've raced in up to now.
Sure. So, yeah, starting with 2010. Was doing a junior league at a track. It was then called Mid-Atlantic Grand Prix. It's Extreme Zone Raceway now in Newcastle, Delaware. Started winning races and then won a couple championships there. And that's really when I knew that this was a path that I wanted to follow. And raced in karts until about 2015. And after that, started to make the jump to cars. Got licensed in SCCA competition as well as NASA, which is National Autosport Association. Got started in school series, the Lucas Oil Formula Car Series. Well, I guess backing up even a little further than that, was licensed by the Bertle Roos Racing School. And then went racing full time in the Lucas Oil Series under the coaching of Jonathan Scarallo with Group A Racing, who then signed me on in Formula 4 for 2020. Did decent in that year. After that, went sports car racing with them in the Radical Cup Series and the NASA Northeast Series. And, shortly after that, did a little bit more sports car racing in the World Racing League. Going into 22, did a little bit more sports car racing in that series as well. And it was toward the end of 22 was where I found Future Star Racing and was able to set up a test with them in September of 22 and did a race with them in 2023.
All right. So part of these races, you've been a winner, and we can see that June AM first place right next to your helmets there on the shelf. Why don't you tell us, as far as from all the way back to 2010, what that race was, we're showing on the screen, and just what's it like to have to fight to the front, and what's some things that always stay in your head as far as how you have to be competing out there on the track?
Yeah, it's very much a rhythm thing. I feel like ever since I was in karting, that photo from 2010 was the points championship race. And the championship trophy. So, it's something that from an early age I was able to catch on to is, stay in your rhythm, keep pushing to be faster. And things like that, they always add up. And, it was a good first stepping stone for me.
And when you got your actually first place, excuse me, where was that, and what was that like to be in P1?
Yeah, first place. My first win in karting was at that track in Delaware, so that always holds a special place to me. And it's amazing. It's the first feeling of being on top of the world. Like, hey, I'm someone now, even though it's a track championship, but you never forget that feeling, and you never let it leave you. Like, it's something that no one can take away from you, and it's just an addiction from there on.
So somebody that is, won 2 Indy 500s, and I originally was connected with to cover a lot of the history of the Unsers was Al Unser Jr. Can you just kind of describe how you got connected with him and what kind of advice and coaching that he's been able to give you, over your time of knowing him?
Yeah, so that all really started back in 2022. I went to the New Jersey Formula 4 and Formula Regional SVRA event, Speed Tour, I believe they call it now. But I was just, walking through the paddock, seeing some of the F4 teams and FR teams, and I knew that Future Star Racing was there. I just missed them. They had packed up and left for the day, but I ran into Aaron, who was driving for them in FR at the time. And we got to talking a little bit, and he was mentioning, that Al was here, and I was asking where he was, and, just ask for some more information about the team. So we were talking a little bit about that. And when I left there, I found their Instagram and was sending messages like, hey, I'm very interested in testing for you guys. They got back to me, and sure enough, about a month later, here we are, Indy at Putnam Park and testing.
That's great. So you were able to work with a team for about 3 years. That was Group A Racing, and it was Joe Scarallo and Jonathan. Why don't you give us a little bit of backstory of them, and then also about their mechanic, Gary Dunford?
Yeah, so Jonathan Scarallo, taught me about 90% of what I know about driving a race car and also how to navigate the industry. So he is the team manager of Group A Racing as well as the driver coach. Joe Scarallo is the team owner. And then Gary Dunford, longtime mechanic for them. He always had a good little bit of, advice as far as feedback and things like that after every testing session and every race session. How can we make the car better? Things like that. Front wing, rear wing, any adjustments that need to be made.
So what did you think, your time with them? Obviously, that was kind of going into and through COVID. What were some of the challenges of dealing with that, as well as what's a little bit of their track record and, and their history in racing, just to give a little bit of credibility to them as well?
Yeah, they are absolutely a racing family. I guess, starting with Jonathan's older brother, Joey, started racing go-karts on Long Island. And, for Jonathan, I'm sure there was no chance that he wasn't going to be involved in it in some way. So, yeah, they own a tire shop, wheel shop on Long Island, Lindenhurst, and they run the race shop out of there as well. So, they are definitely a knowledgeable race team, and it was a pleasure to drive for them.
All right, so let's talk about the training, because you've got on track, and then you've got, throughout the year when you're either in front of a simulator or you're out biking. I know you also like clearing your head by playing the piano. Just give us kind of some of your mindsets of exactly how you get yourself in that flow state outside of the track and train yourself, being a kind of a solo trainer, to be able to be focused when you're back on the track, and also talk to the simulation games as well.
Sure. So I guess, starting with physical training, it's the one thing that I actually put a little bit ahead of racing, just because, if you show up and you're not physically prepared, you're not mentally prepared either. So, everything affects everything. And so that's why I train as much as I do and train as hard as I do, because I try to equate it to what we're doing on the racetrack. So whether I'm cycling, I usually shoot for 22 miles per day. If I'm not cycling, if I'm at the track, I'm at a hotel, obviously can't bring the bike, so running 10K per day. But yeah, it's a mindset that never really leaves you, because as a driver, as an athlete, as a competitor, you're always thinking, all right, well, even in the most minuscule, things day to day, I could have done that better. I'll do it better next time. And it's a constant mindset. So obviously translates over as well to simulator work. And, the simulator is a great tool to have. And it's something that I feel has really enhanced my performance when I get to the track.
All right, so let's talk about somebody you've known throughout your life that decided to eventually sponsor your race career. That's Richard Harpos, and just kind of give a little bit of the backstory, the connection, and then how they were involved and how long they were involved, and really how you tried to help promote Harpos as one of your very first sponsors.
Yeah, they were my first outside sponsor. So yeah, that came about. The owner, Rich, he always had an interest in racing, and he always asked how karting was going back in those days. And yeah, we approached him and we said, we have an opportunity. If you want to sponsor us, if you want to be a part of this team for a race at Sebring International Raceway in 2018, and made up a decal for both my helmet and the car. Signed a photo for him, and he has it in his salon now. So it was, I remember, a good first step for me to be like, all right, well, this is our first outside sponsor, and it's a great thing to always remember.
Right. So one person that's been there from the beginning is your father, Manny, and he works for Lockheed Martin. His company's Applied Aero Technologies, and he also has a wind tunnel, which I know that you've been able to kind of assist in that and learn about the aerodynamics, not just of aviation, but also racing. So why don't you talk a little bit about, how he supported you, as well as, I know you mentioned to me that, when you leave a track after you're done, you guys can really brainstorm on, how the cars can be dialed in, and just kind of explain that a little bit about your dad.
Yeah. So with that, it's very interesting because, we'll talk from time to time about it. If there's something with the front wing or the rear wing, and it's interesting to get his take on, some of the things. Obviously, the team owns the car and they have final say of what happens. But, at the airport, if we have a down moment, or on the plane, we'll talk about certain things like this is what affects this, and just get a better understanding of how everything works aerodynamically.
Well, he's obviously supported your career since 2010, and that was when you were 11 or 13, or how old was it when you really started?
I was 11.
11 years old, right. So what's, I guess, one of the favorite moments that you were successful that he was able to share it with you? If you want to just kind of touch on that for a second.
Sure. So I guess, yeah, it was definitely probably, which year was that? My first win. So I would say 2011. Actually, around this time in 2011, it was the fall league. And yeah, every Saturday, up at probably 8 a.m, go to Delaware. It was always me and him, and it still is. So it's a form of a family business, as I've always liked to call it. So, memories like that, it's something that you always hold close.
Well, I know you want to make them proud, and we're going to show a picture of your mom, Dorothy, as well as your sister, Julia. And here's another shot of them with you right in front of your car. Was this before or after you went out on the track? And where was that?
Yeah, this was right before qualifying at Virginia International Raceway in 2020, which was one of the events that year that the whole family came out. And it's always interesting to see, in between, obviously, sessions and, doing what I need to do, seeing how they're, taken to that kind of environment, and seeing them soak it all in is pretty cool.
All right, so here's a shot of you in front of the pack, and I know that you said you got pole position for this, but even if you get the first spot, in front of all the other cars. You got to maintain that. So why don't you talk about how you got pole position, what type of car this is, where this was, and just about the race itself, because I know there's a lot of diverse cars behind you.
Yeah, so we ran, that was the NASA Northeast division. And the class we were running in that was Super Unlimited, which is the fastest class in that series. So it was me and I think 4 other cars in that class. We were the 4 fastest. The Chevy Camaro behind me there, the blue Chevy Camaro, he absolutely was the fastest on the straightaways, but we had the advantage in the corners because, you know, we had better downforce. It was built for a road course versus, you know, American muscle cars, you know, 900 horsepower. They're going to have the advantage on the straightaways. So, yeah, you know, we qualified on pole, but like you were saying, it was absolutely a game of, all right, I need to maintain and advance really in the corners and, you know, be aware of those advantages. Where can we pull ahead? And sure enough, that's what we were able to do and came away with the victory.
All right, so let's talk about just kind of overall, you know, some of the statistics and also areas that you've raced. You know, obviously it started back in 2010. You've said total you've had about 150 races and about 20 podiums. Is that correct?
Total, including the karting years, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So, you know, junior league, that formula class, was that in Jersey? You said you did the East Coast, 8 races the first year, and the second year was 6 races. You got 3 podiums, and then you moved on to Formula Ford Group A racing and 2020. Is that accurate?
Formula 4, yeah, with Group A racing in 2020. That was my first year in pro racing and did decent. I mean, it was slowly work in progress from Mid-Ohio, the first race, until Circuit of the Americas, the last race of that year. But it was really around mid-year. I would say around mid-year that year is where I kind of had that breakthrough of, you know, this is what it feels like to push the car and be able to get on the limit and be comfortable with the uncomfortable, as they say. So it was a good year.
And, you know, we can look through the rest of these, but what I think is great is just kind of focusing on your most recent formula wins, you know, from 2018, 19, 20, 21. You know, if you just, and even, you know, getting 3 first place in a row in 2021, if you want to speak to that for a second, and also what your focus is moving forward for 2024.
Yeah, so for 2021, it was one of those years where after 2020, I was, you know, that was a hectic year for all of us due to, you know, the uncertainty with COVID and everything and being very careful. And I remember my anxiety was very, very high. So I was like, all right, I need to have a mental reset here and, you know, see what 2021 brings us. And sure enough, just went out, didn't think about it too much, did my thing, and came away with 3 victories. So that was good. But yeah, for next year, the hope is to be able to run in the Mazda MX-5 Cup full time. And, you know, I feel like that's a series that's growing in popularity, which is always good for, you know, drivers like myself to be exposed, to have a platform to win on and make a name for myself and get recognized and move forward in the sport.
Something else that I think is great about you trying to give back, and it's at Villanova University, the Formula SAE team, that you're essentially going to be helping different students actually learning how to drive better and their mechanics in their education. But explain that and how you're just trying to give back to that.
Yeah, so that was something that came about, really came about, I would say, trying to remember, maybe like 4 months ago. I was helping them out a little bit with their competition for this past year. They're already preparing for next year, so they're on it, and I'm happy to help them, you know, any way that I can, you know, by translating to being able to help them translate to driving technique, because the Formula SAE car is a smaller formula car, so there are some things where karting does translate. Other things where, karting doesn't really translate, which I can help them with as well, just by explaining the best way I can. But, my dad has had a hand in Villanova's Formula SA team for over 10 years now. So I've been aware of it for a while, and I just look forward to helping any way I can.
All right. So if you're going to look at this as messaging to potential sponsors as well, what types of industries, because of your character, because of your hobbies, because of just kind of your mental mindset, would you be passionate about supporting? And also, what can a sponsor expect from being able to work with you, and how you're going to help push their vision, their message, all those things that they really want in a good driver representative?
Yeah, so very big into the fitness industry. So, sports equipment, companies, manufacturers, things like that. I think I'd be a very good representative for them, on track and off. I'm very health conscious. So, being able to fuel yourself with what you need to be able to perform at your best as an athlete. Very into Cliff Bars, very into natural foods. So natural food companies would be very good. Gaming companies, like I have an Asus monitor for iRacing, Rocket Gaming. I have a Rocket Gaming chair, LG Technologies for the steering wheel and pedals, things like that. And as far as a message for sponsors, for what they can expect from me, I truly do believe that, I am the most driven person to get to a pinnacle level, such as IMSA, such as World Endurance Challenge, such as IndyCar, maybe even Formula One day. We don't know, but those are the goals that I shoot for. And when I put my mind to something, I always come through, and I make sure of that. There is no try, only do.
And then what would you give as far as advice for any up and coming driver? Because you've obviously been doing it with like 13 years at this point. So what would be some inspiring words on how they need to focus and what they really need to do to actually get to the level that you've attained?
Yeah, definitely. It feels like yesterday I was there in karting, wondering what my next step was going to be. So don't overthink it. It's not. I'm trying to figure out how the best way to word it is. If this is your passion and this is what you really want to do, it's going to happen. You're going to find a way to push through, and you're going to do it no matter what any of your critics say. So keep pushing hard, keep doing what you need to do. Focus on your fitness, focus on your mental well-being, and focus on things that you need to do to be able to get to that level.
That's great. There's a lot of kids that want to do it. A lot of other people that don't have the luxury of being able to have it financed and have family support. And the fact that you've been able to have this long road up to this point, and now you got a decent amount of wins under your belt, and you're really looking at going to that next level and getting consistent sponsors to be able to help. So I wish you luck. And is there anything else you'd like to say to any of the fans that might be watching this out there?
Yeah, to the fans, obviously I appreciate you guys. It's been really overwhelming over the past, I would say, like 2 years or so, the uptick in attention I've been getting on social media, things like that. So love every one of you guys, and glad to have you along for the ride with me on this. So I'm blessed, truly blessed.
All right, well, Robert, I wish you luck on your road ahead. And from Voices of Racing, you've already had a great road, and I think you're going to have a lot more success. Just make sure you always walk away if you do hit that wall.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, just stay on the line.